dropped here at Daytona, and away we go for the first time. Nicholas Borcel, Sean.
Looks like most get through unscathed. Look at that, there's Reed Gibson. A big move at the inside line of Dom's, possibly a little bit of contact.
Up now as we've got three wide action going through turns 1 and 2.
And they're underway. Eric Hahn takes a nice jump. Wilson hasn't let him go very far.
Nice to go out here for Circuit Spa Francorchamps. Alex Johnson's off to a brilliant start there.
Just how oddly shaped this one is. We saw in the background Eric Hahn go for a bit of a swing, and he's gone and he's over.
New stuff. Cody Graham's the one-on-one up into second place. Alex Johnson 6/10 to lead at the moment.
J2ICS up front. There's Andrew Kessel, Justin Sang.
They are ready to go. The lights are out, and away we go for the very first time here at Okayama International Circuit. Finley Fitzsimmons. Good evening, race fans, and welcome to the second round of the Just Two Idiots Cup Series Sprint Series, as we are here today at Rudskogen Motor Center here in Norway, taking things a little bit overseas this time around for the second round of, again, the Sprint Series. My name is Mason Heimball with Team Goon Squad, bringing you the action here once again. 1080p, 60 frames a second, as we always do, as we prepare ourselves for the Radical Revenge at Rudskogen. Excuse me, folks, as it is going to be quite the interesting race here for drivers, as I've been informed by the admins here that, well, by a little bit of a few misclicks for setting up today's event, the qualifying for today's event is supposedly using the low downforce setup of this car. Ooh, as we're seeing Captain CK, the number 50 driver, getting a little bit loose here, trying to get those tires warmed up the best that they can here. And I gotta say, I haven't had a whole lot of time myself to drive the Radical SR8, but I can tell you right now, it is a car that prefers downforce when at all possible, especially in a track like this. I've driven this track a few different times in a couple different cars, but not this one in particular. But what I mean to say here, folks, is that here in qualifying, we're going to see the low downforce setting being used by all of these drivers. And then going into both of our sprint and feature race here today, the drivers will be using the high downforce option. So this is going to throw quite a curveball here for, I think, practically the entire field here. Now, once drivers get settled in, perhaps, say, get the first sprint race done and over with, then we'll start to see things settle out here a little bit, but we still have quite a ways to go before that happens here, and drivers are just now starting to get those tires to a point where drivers are going to be able to start to put in some laps here, as Simply Steve and the 023 machine has done here, with Long Island Nerd coming in second place here on the pole so far, a 119.15 being the best time put down here at the moment by Simply Steve, and you can see that on the left-hand side of your screen at the moment. So Simply Steve, the 023 driver, going to be the man to beat at the moment here. And taking a look last week, or not rather last week, but 2 weeks prior at Downington Park for the Fuzzy Tacos Friendship Bonanza. God, I love these names. I don't have the the name translation, or, well, the name conversion's quite down. But Nick Beaver, a.k.a. Beaver, the number 10 driver, coming away with the feature win. And Devin Laporte, I believe, is, well, that is the winner of the sprint race. But, I'm not sure who that translates to as far as the usernames go. But, again, still learning that. We'll figure that out as time goes on. Bob Wallace, the 666 machine, going to come out at the top of the pole here so far with a 116.859. Driver starting to get very settled in here. And again, as we're using this low downforce setting on these cars, or setup, I should say, we will expect to see drivers improve in lap times once we actually get into the race here today, as again, this is a high downforce track at best. It is definitely not a place. It is a track that you are going to want to utilize that downforce as much as possible to carry that momentum through these turns. This is a very technical, a very twisty, curvy track with a lot of elevation changes and just overall a very tricky track to master and get right. And I'm frankly very glad that iRacing released this track as a free track to all members on the service. It is a great track to learn on. It has pretty much a little bit of everything that you could look for as a driver that's looking to just better their racecraft. It is a small but very technical and very good track to race on. Other drivers might not agree with me on that one, but I myself think it is a good track. While difficult in some cases, it is quite a fun track to race on. And while we have a little bit of time here, and while Bob Wallace, again, the 666 machine with a 116.211, having the best time here at the moment, let's actually take a second here to ride on board with, you know what, since I got to talk to Squilliam here before we actually went live, let's actually ride on board here with the number 6 driver, currently holding second place on the pole so far. So going to be up in the front row for starting this race, and as I say that, Beaver coming across the line with a 115.68. Very good time here for Beaver and the number 10 machine. Going to be up at the front row, and Squilliam going to drop down to third. And let's see if he's going to improve this lap time around, or this lap around, I should say, as again we're riding on board from the helmet camera of the number 6 driver. And just watching this helmet camera is making me want to get in the driver's seat myself. I do love driving this car. As I've said before in the previous broadcast of the Sprint Series, it is quite a fantastic car to drive. But I want to also thank everyone who is tuning in here, watching the broadcast along with me, as I was going to say. But for everyone who's tuning in, supporting drivers, supporting the league, so on and so forth, it is a pleasure to have you here. And Squilliam, as we are riding on board, comes across the line and takes away a 115.61 as it's shown on timing and scoring, but 609 as it's shown on your screen. So Squilliam now going to be the man to beat here, and looking very, very good here, as we were just taking a look on board there with the number 6 driver, Beaver, and challenging it here with that 115.290. So right now, at the moment, the top 3 are all in that sub 15-second margin at the moment, while we have a little bit of a spread outside of that, between 2 and 3 seconds for the most part, for the majority, a little bit further, a little bit more towards the tail end of the pack here. But again, I mean, this is going to change for drivers as we enter into the actual race, the sprint and the feature itself, given that these drivers are going to have a completely different setup for these cars to drive. Now, granted, it's not going to be game-changing, I guess, maybe for some drivers, but some drivers here who may be wanting that downforce a little bit more. And I'm not entirely certain what the intention was originally for these cars to have setup-wise. Maybe it was to have both of them to be high downforce. I'm not entirely certain. I didn't get quite all the details, but I'm more than certain that here at Rutsgagen it would be more than likely a high downforce track. Again, this is a track that I have yet to drive with the Radical SR8, so maybe after tonight we'll get a little bit of an idea of what it's like with both low and high downforce for all of these drivers. And currently Beaver, Squilliam, Simply Steve, DC, Bob Wallace, all the top 5 at the moment showing dominance here in the low downforce setup here at the moment. But these are all drivers here who are fairly experienced and have done well in the first race that we've saw here for Season 5 of the J2I Sprint Series. So, not all too surprised to see that here, but what I am going to be surprised to see is if anyone falls off here from that pace or from these positions going into the sprint and the feature itself. If that high downforce is going to affect any of these drivers, which again I don't really think it will, but it could. Seeing a little bit of a squabble here between Beaver and not sure who that was there, just up ahead of the number 10 driver. But either way, either how, it is open qualifying here at Rudskogen, so there's going to be lap traffic all over the place for these drivers. So you kind of got to keep your eyes open, and it goes both ways for all drivers out on track. You know, everyone's going to be on flying laps and so on and so forth. And thankfully, in the iRacing service, you are able to utilize driver in-game comms to let other drivers know that you're coming up on them. You're going to be making a move on their left or right, whatever the case might be. And just try and avoid people as much as possible. Granted, it doesn't always work. It's not a perfect system, but at the end of the day, the effort is what matters. That is what is important at the end of the day. Beaver and Squilliam continue to have a bit of a battle for the lead spot here and the podium at the moment, and the pole, I should say, at the moment. Continuing to swap spots for the best time, and it looks like they are actually tied for that best time at the moment with a 1:15.29, literally a thousandth of a second separating these two drivers. So coming down to the very, very skin of these drivers' teeth here today. But what I am curious to see here is how this race is going to start for these drivers. Now, if you didn't catch the broadcast last week for the Endurance Series here with J2I, Monza was quite the interesting show, might I say. If you haven't seen that broadcast, definitely go check that out. That was quite the show to witness. But what I do want to point out here is the fact that turn 1 here at Rudskogen, Captain CK getting a little bit loose. They're coming out of, I believe that's... I got to get my bearings here. Yes, turn 12. So just coming out of turn 12. So the final few turns that we have here before coming out onto the straightaway. But turn number 1 here, and actually let's bring up the blimp camera here so we can get a good look at that as Captain CK, the number 50 driver, makes his way into it. A big kink right into turn 2 in a long right-hander. This is where things could get real dicey right out of the gate here once the green flag drops here for the Radical Revenge at Rudskogen. So I gotta say, I am excited for this one, folks. I hope you all are too at home, as we are just a few minutes away from wrapping up qualifying here and getting our first green flag underway here for the J2Y Sprint Series for season number 5 and round number 2. And again, I want to thank everyone who's currently joining in on the broadcast, tuning in and hopefully enjoying the action so far, as we've still just got about a little under 2 minutes, a little more than 2 minutes actually, before we officially see the checkered flag fly here in qualifying and see who's going to end up where on this starting lineup. And with the slightly more downforce, and I should say a lot more downforce with these cars, they do produce quite a bit of downforce. Not exactly a formula level, but definitely enough, a noticeable amount when you are driving these cars. It is actually quite noticeable and rather fun, as I always say. Ooh, eat my dust, the 24 driver. And this is a perfect example of what we might see for a lot of drivers as they make their way in through turn 1 there. And imagine not just one driver there, but 2, 3, maybe even 4 trying to make their way through that turn at the same time here. And G-Bay gonna come right to a stop there. Not sure if he was just doing a flying lap and calling it quits there right at the end, but either way, 30 seconds to go before we officially see qualifying end here. In Beaver and Squilliam, I don't think are going to really try anything else here. Squilliam has done everything that he can, and neither one of them, I think, are going to be able to shave off that near 10th, 100th of a second that they need to get ahead of one or the other. In this case, Beaver is technically going to be the one ahead at this moment. So Beaver going to come away with the lead on that one. But there it is. Checker flag flying here for qualifying, and let's go ahead and get into our first starting grid of today's race, which will be our sprint. Beaver and Squilliam up in the front row. DC and Simply Steve taking up the second row. Captain CK and Bob Wallace in the third row. Prince Adam and G-Bay in the fourth row. Eat My Dust and Nicolator in the fifth row. AJ and Urko taking up the sixth row as we take a move down the row here. Biker Pilot and Long Island Nerd in seventh. Caudata and Book taking up the eighth row here. 976 in IMV Cog in ninth row. And Garlic Dog taking up 19th. Taking up the tail end of the field here as drivers get themselves gridded up, ready to go, and waiting for the lights to go out here for the first time. So it is going to be, I was wondering that for a second. I, for some reason, thought we were going to be doing a rolling start, but I remembered, silly me, it is going to be a standing start for these drivers. So just a few seconds left for them to get themselves onto the grid and ready for the start of today's race. And I got to say, I have no words to describe what we are about to see, about to witness here for the first time at Rudskogen for round number 2 of the J2Y Sprint Series. But I know this, you're not going to want to miss it. So stay tuned if you are already tuned into the action, and get ready as the lights are about to go on here. And out they go, and away we go for the first time here at Rudskogen. Heading into turn number 1. Let's see how drivers handle this one as big pileup moving through. Actually, not quite the biggest pileup that I was expecting here. Bob Wallace going to be the only driver so far to have any oh boy, it only gets worse the more that we look at it here. So let's back this up here. Let's see exactly how this one unfolded here. There goes Bob Wallace, and let's see Captain CK getting involved here. Eat My Dust getting involved. Multiple drivers all finding themselves in a bit of a pickle here. Biker Pilot also one of them here. The number 42 driver going to find himself just on the exit of turn 4 there, it looks like. All in his lonesome, trying to get things sorted back out here, but looking back up towards the field here. Beaver and Squilliam both going to be duking it out for the lead at the moment, but only just so, about a half a second separating these two drivers. And while the rest of the field tries to recover from what they just had here, and also trying to get used to the setup that they have been bestowed with. Again, being given a low downforce setup for qualifying, and then the opposite, a high downforce setup here for both the sprint as well as the feature race here. 20 laps that we will see for our our sprint race. We're taking a look right now with the 33 driver of Urko, with AJ, the 45 machine, right on his tail and trying to close in as much as he can here. We're going to ride on board here from the roll bar of the 45 driver as he tries to close in on Urko here in a very, very tricky set of turns that we have here that drivers are currently working their way through. You have to get these lines perfect to stay fast here. Otherwise, any mistake can cost you dearly, as we have here with Urko, the 33 driver, just getting a little bit loose there. And that's going to allow AJ to move on through up ahead here into 7th place. Out of the final turn onto the front straightaway. Urko now going to be on the chase here, trying to gain back that position that he just lost. Just a little bit further back, we have 976 and Caw Data also having a similar battle here for 12th place, as Caw Data just about a quarter of a second behind 976, about a half a second now as they work their way through turn 1. Going a little bit over the line there for the 14 driver. That's definitely, I can imagine that's probably going to come with a little bit of a time penalty being served to the 14 machine. It's probably already been served at this point. That is the one nice thing about the iRacing service, is that you don't necessarily need to come down into pit road to serve time penalties. Not always, at least. By default, if you go over track limits and iRacing determines that you've gained an advantage, you simply have to slow down and give up that time. Not something that you really get to see too often, I suppose. Either way, and either how, it's lap 3 of 20 and already oh boy. Nicolator here letting Bob Wallace, I think that was Bob Wallace, on by here. So I'm not sure if that was a little bit of a mistake there from the number 5 driver's part, or what the case might have been here. Caw Data in big trouble here, just between 12 and 13, the final few turns that we have here. As again, this is a tough track, and all of these drivers all basically trying to adapt to the setup as they're racing here. It's going to be a very tricky thing to do here. Caw Data gonna get right back on the tail, though, of the 976 driver. Just a little over a quarter of a second separating these two drivers, and just up ahead, actually, as we're starting to miss some of the action here with the leaders, DC and Squilliam. Now battling for 2nd place. Squilliam dropping back into 3rd here as the number 3 moves on up into 2nd. And Squilliam puts up a heck of a fight here as they come down the front straightaway and across the checkered line. Squilliam back up into 2nd now as they come into turn 1 here. DC on the inside. Squilliam going to have the advantage as they come through the long right-hander out of 2 onto the long straightaway heading into turn number 3. DC still going to stay on the tail here. Simply Steve also trying to keep up into the mix here, but this is where things get a little bit interesting. A downhill right-hander, and it's very long, and it's very tricky to get that downshift and apply that throttle correctly, because it is tricky, let me tell you. I have spun out many times in that specific turn there, and this is another tricky part. Again, the part of the track where you have to nail that line almost to perfection every single time. And Squilliam, big drop-off here for the number 6 driver. Not sure exactly what just happened there. He seemed to just back right off. I don't know if that was a mistake or if that was some kind of iRacing penalty being served. I have no idea at this point. I would have to imagine it's iRacing served, because there is no race control for these races for this league. So I can't imagine that there is any sort of race control admin in the booth overlooking these things. But neither here nor there. Taking a look at some of the other battles throughout the field that we can see at the moment. Garlic Dog and Book both going to have a little bit of a bout here. Book in the 560 ruby red machine that you can see just ahead of Garlic Dog in that iridescent 199 machine. As they navigate their way through turns 1 and 2 here. And like I said, folks, you know, I kind of assumed that this would happen as this race progresses on. Drivers are going to get more and more comfortable with these cars, with this setup. Now that they've had a few laps to turn, a few, well, chances to spin out and figure out what the limits of this car now are. Now that they've had a little bit more room to expand with since qualifying, trying to find those limits and figure out where they are and trying not to go over them has been probably a critical part here for a lot of these drivers. But you'll also notice as Beaver just came across the line there with a 114.99, we are starting to see those lap times improve here for drivers. That high downforce starting to show as Book gets a little bit loose coming out of turn number 12, having to recorrect it, get himself spun back around, going the right direction here, dropping down to 13th, and now going to have Caw Data, the number 14 driver, coming up right hot on his tail and seeing what he can do here as they come out of turn number 13 onto the front straightaway and back across the checkered line here. Lap 7 of number 20 here so far in today's race, and already a lot of action that we've seen here so far, and still a lot more left to be seen. But Beaver, we got to give a quick shout out, a quick mention here to Beaver. Actually, there seems to be a little bit of damage here to that number 14. You can see the wing on the left-hand side, a little crooked there, not quite right. But back to what we were talking about here. Beaver, the number 10 driver, we haven't talked about him in a little bit, I don't think, has improved his gap between himself and second place up to 7 and about a quarter of a second at this, 7 seconds at this point in time. So phenomenal work from Beaver, showing his dominance here at the moment and really showing his expertise behind the wheel of this Radical. So great work here from Beaver and the number 10 machine here and the team and the pit crew working on that number 10 machine, making sure it was ready in tip-top shape, even despite the odd regulations that we had here for qualifying, as well as our race here for the setups of the cars. But I'm sure the administration team will have a fun one with that amongst themselves once things are all said and done here. But we've got some great racing happening here between Bob Wallace, Urko, and AJ. We're riding now with Bob Wallace in the 666 machine, as there's about a little bit of about a half a second gap between each of these drivers here. But I just want to take a second here. Let's actually take a listen here with Bob Wallace and just have a lap on board here around Rudskogen. Excellent side-by-side battle there with Bob Wallace and Urko there for just a moment, as there's a lot of smoke here. Not sure who that was. So we came in and out of turns 1 and 2 here, and Bob Wallace and Urko continue to duke it out here for that 8th place spot. And there's a little bit of traffic here with Prince Adam, the number 43 driver, going to be right in the way as they come. Ooh, that's a tricky spot to be in here too. Right in the line for what seems to be I don't want to say a slow driver, but it seemed like he was trying to recover there for a moment and was trying to get back up to speed, and might have impeded there on Urko and Bob Wallace's line there for a little bit, but they're back into it, and now Prince Adam is going to have the 33 driver in the 666 machine right on his tail, and gonna have to fend that one off here, as they are just, you can see here, riding out the rear view right on the tail of the 43 machine. You can see both Urko and Bob Wallace tracking down Prince Adam as quickly as they can here and trying to stay as close as they can. But Bob Wallace and Urko, they both continue to have their bout here, as Bob Wallace with the inside line advantage and quite a bit more confidence, a bit more momentum here through that hard right-hander of 3 and 4, able to overtake Urko for that 8th place spot, and now pushing up to Prince Adam in that 7th place spot, and also seemingly closing in on the 45 of AJ, who's seems to have decent pace here in 6th place. But as we progress through this run here and tires start to wear off for these drivers, and this is definitely a very aggressive track on tires regardless of what you're driving. I mean, unless you're an expert at tire management, it is going to be a rough day out there for some of these drivers here, I think. And based on what I'm seeing in timing and scoring, it looks like AJ has got good pace on the straightaways. So far, isn't losing a whole lot of pace to Prince Adam, or excuse me, to G-Bay, who's ahead of him in fifth place at the moment, is actually gaining on him in that fact. But the only drivers that he's got to be worried about with 8 laps left to go here is going to be Prince Adam and Bob Wallace, who again showing they're closing in on him quite quickly here. But I've got to wonder if that's got to be due to the fact that these two are pushing each other to their limits here and trying to just go faster and faster with one another. I know that I've been in plenty of races myself where you have someone on your tail, or even you're chasing a driver, and you actually improve your lap times by following them and by just having that bit of pressure there to, well, make you do better, force you to do better, try and take different lines, do different things, shorten your braking zone by a few feet, a couple 5, 10, 15 feet. Ooh, car data, the 14 machine as he works his way through 3 and 4, getting a little bit loose, and this is a common place here. But not a good place to end up trying to get your car reset here on the track, as that could have ended in catastrophe for multiple drivers here. But luckily everyone making it through A-OK here. But turns 3 and 4 is definitely a spot on the track here where a lot of drivers find themselves spinning out, and again, it's just how the elevation changes here at Rudskogen that just make this track a very difficult, well, not a very difficult, but a tricky track to master and just learn the best line for it. It has a lot of challenges that don't seem apparent the first couple laps around. Well, maybe they actually do seem apparent the first couple laps around, because let me tell you, it is, I've never driven a track like this before, and I'm glad I have now, because it's easily amongst one of my top fives of favorites to drive, at least for practice or just really just having fun. It is a fun, fast-paced track to drive on, and I'm glad to see that it has made its way onto the J2I schedule for the Sprint Series. It seems to be posing some fairly decent racing, but I gotta say here, for Beaver, it doesn't seem to be giving much of a challenge here for the number 10 driver, as he just continues to drive away with the lead of about 11.5 seconds, now separating himself in DC, so kind of all out on his lonesome here at the moment. Long Island Nerd and Garlic Dog both seemingly having a close battle there for a moment. It almost seemed like they were going to, and it seemed to have faded off there, but Garlic Dog with, ironically, Team Garlic, going to be doing fairly well here for himself and his team, as currently holding 11th. I believe his teammate, who I thought was here today, but I think I might have got mixed up with another driver here. That's okay, though. Garlic Dog doing a phenomenal job here for his team. Close to a top 10. Going to see if he can track down Nicolator, who we're looking at it now is about, well, almost a half a lap ahead at the moment, unfortunately. But that seems to be where the split in the field kind of ends here, is that 10th place spot. So from 10th and beyond is where that roughly 30-second gap is showing itself, aside from Beaver, who still holding about a almost a 13-second gap now between himself and second place, as there's about 4 laps left to go here before we see the checkered flag fly, and I can't imagine Beaver has anything to worry about, as well as DC and Squilliam. I mean, these two drivers have consistently stayed here in the second and third place spots and are still within about a second and a half of each other. There still could be a potential of some battles between these two drivers as we see, well, actually, the checkered flag is out here as we've surpassed 20 minutes here. I keep forgetting that it's either or. It's one or the other. 20 laps or 20 minutes, and the checkered flag is going to come out here, and Beaver is going to take it across the line here for the win of the Sprint Series. And DC and Squilliam take it across the line for second and third place, as we continue to have a couple battles here for what will be the final lap here for Prince Adam and Urko and many other drivers as they come out of the final turn. And across the checkered line, Prince Adam taking home 8th place, Urko in 9th. And other drivers making their way through the field, looking to finish out their race here today as well. Captain CK going to be one of them as he just now comes across the line. Garlic Dog also going to be, I believe, coming out of the final turn here. Yes, final turn here for Garlic Dog. And across the line, taking home 11th here today for himself and Team Garlic. But for Beaver and for Team Love Seat, it will be a win here today in the sprint race. And as we have a 10-minute warm-up here, we are also going to take a moment here to interview at least one of our drivers here and get a moment to talk to So here, as we have the post race results here for our sprint race, and let's go ahead and see if we can get Mr. Beaver up here into the booth here. Beaver, sir, do you have a read?
Hello?
Hello, Beaver. Welcome.
Oh, hi.
Welcome to the booth, sir. It's okay. I was wondering if you were in there. I was going to transport you back to your channel here, but seems like you're here, and hopefully I have a minute of your. I can have a minute of your time here.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Sorry.
No,
Sorry,
you're okay. You're all right. But I want to congratulate you first of all on your win here in the sprint race. That was a phenomenal finish for yourself and for Team Loveseed. Fantastic work. And quite a dominant finish that you had here with, I think it was about a 13.5 second gap between yourself and DC by the end of it. I mean, with a low downforce setup being used in qualifying and then converting that to a high downforce setup going into both our sprint and our feature, I mean, was there any sort of major difference between the two that you felt in both sessions here, just that you noticed right out of the gate here?
It honestly, it felt very much the same. The setups are very similar. The only difference was the obvious lack of downforce. I think the throttle application was all the same. The brake felt the same. You had to be a little bit more on your toes, but overall, I think practicing in low downforce was good practice going into the race where you'd have high downforce. Yeah, so that was a fun little trick. It obviously was a mistake by the setup, but I think it was a lot of fun. It adds a little bit of dynamic to it. You got to practice, qualifying, practice the race. That was a unique dynamic, I think.
Absolutely. Well, coming in here to the feature race, which correct me if I'm wrong here, it's an inverted top 8.
Correct. Yes.
So coming into this and knowing that you're going to start 8th, I mean, what kind of worries do you have for the first lap of this race here? I mean, it seemed like for the first lap of the sprint, everything went pretty well for turn 1, but I'm still curious to see if we're going to have any sort of issues going into this feature. I mean, we had a little bit of calamity coming out of turn 2 there towards the midfield and beyond, but do you think there's going to be any sort of issues that you're going to run into, being that you're not right there at the front of the field, you're the first one in, first one out sort of situation?
Yeah, it's definitely that's an advantage, right? So this next race will actually be my first go at traffic at all. I think the goal is just to play it very safe, and the race is 40 minutes, so there's plenty of time. I think the pace is there. If I can just bide my time, not push too hard, give everybody as much space as they need. Passing here is difficult, but possible. So, yeah, hopefully, I don't wish anything up against my opponents because everyone here is so friendly. But if one or two accidentally have a spin, that's fine. And tires are cold. They are really cold in this car, especially right out of the gate. So I'm gonna try to keep that in mind as well. I know first laps have come to bite me in the butt in the past, so I got to remember that the tires are cold, and that there'll be cars to pass. There's a strong field here. Squilliam, I'm really impressed with DC's pace. I think this is your first season with us, but over the past few seasons, he's picked up a lot of pace, and it's good to see more cars running up front like that. So I'm looking forward to racing with them in this next one.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what you guys have going into the next 40 minutes for our feature. But, man, before I let you go, Beaver, and before you get the few minutes that you have left here in the warm-up, anyone you want to shout out and you want to thank before you go here?
I guess just all of J2I. Everybody is super cool and friendly to hang out with. It's like a little family. I love engaging with everyone. And everyone's a lot of fun. You've seen the humor in our Discord. If people care to join, it's a riot. So shout out to everyone, and I love racing with you guys.
Absolutely. Well, Beaver, I want to thank you for joining me up here in the booth, even though I kind of just, dragged you in here. But congratulations once again, man, and I hope maybe we'll get to talk to you again before the night's over.
Yeah, I sure hope so. Yeah, thank you very much.
Absolutely. You have a good one, man, and good luck to you out there.
Thank you very much.
All right, I hope I put him back in the correct racing channel there, but we've got just a couple minutes here left. Let's go ahead and I actually got to check our post-race results here again just to make sure I'm not crazy. We've got DC up in second place. Let's go ahead and give DC some love here while we've still got just a couple minutes here. DC, if you got a read on me, can you hear me up here in the booth? All right, so DC does not seem to be available at the moment. Let's give our buddy Squilliam a try here. Squilliam, are you available, sir?
What's up, man?
Squilliam, welcome to the booth, and congratulations on your podium here for the official sprint of the sprint series. That's quite the tongue twister that we have here. But
it sure is, man.
Squill, you did a phenomenal job here in what was started out as a semi-chaotic start to today's race, given like you mentioned to me before the race started, and as I eloquently let everyone know watching the broadcast, that everyone was starting on in qualifying in the low downforce, moving on into the high downforce, yada yada yada. I've explained this probably over 100 dozen times at this point, but I mean, for yourself, what was it like moving from that low downforce to high downforce? I mean, did it really have any implications here on your pace going into today's sprint?
Oh, of course, man. Yeah, it's so different. This track really requires a lot of downforce, and when you go from nothing to all of it, I was turning in too early. I got 5 slowdowns that race. I'll just let you know that much. So that's why I just kept getting caught every time. But so I kept overcompensating and cutting the corners and getting slowdowns and stuff, man. I mean, it was definitely tough to figure out when you go from something so drastic. You're going a whole second faster now with that downforce on the car. It's very different.
Yeah, and it definitely showed too once we got to green flag, or once the lights went out and we've got to racing. It was very apparent that a lot of drivers were adjusting on the fly, trying to get used to the car as they were racing. But it was also quite surprising to see how quickly a lot of drivers, pretty much the entire field, adapted once they got a couple laps under their belt, maybe a couple spins out of the way before they actually got their pace settled in here. But I've got a minute left here of your time, Squilliam. I don't want to take up any more of it. Anyone you quickly want to shout out here or thank before I let you go here?
Shout out to Kelsey. I know you're watching. Shout out to you. You're always watching every single race I do. And shout out my girlfriend Abby if she's watching. I have no idea if she's watching. And shout out my brother Matt because he shouted me out last week.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Squilliam, for joining me up here in the booth, and congratulations once again on your podium finish here for the sprint. Hopefully get to talk to you again here in the feature, but only time will tell, and we've got just about an hour before we figure that out here for sure.
For sure, man.
All right, you have a good one.
You too, bro.
Alrighty, folks, so that was Squilliam out of the booth here, taking home the 3rd place spot here for our sprint race. And as we've only got just a few seconds left before we wrap up our warm-up here, and we get ourselves ready for the 40 minutes of our feature race here today at Rudskogen for round number 2 of the J2Y Sprint Series. Again, my name is Mason Heimball with Team Goon Squad, bringing you the action here today, and hopefully everyone at home watching is enjoying the action thus far and having a fantastic day themselves as we prepare ourselves for the start of our feature race here today. And up in the front row, we have Prince Adam and Bob Wallace in the front row with AJ and G-Bay. Taking up the second row, Simply Steve and Squilliam in our third row. DC and Beaver in our fourth row. Urko, Nicolator in the fifth row. Garlic Dog and Book taking up the sixth row. Moving on down the grid, Eat My Dust and Biker Pilot in the seventh row. Caw Data, 976 in the eighth row. Captain CK and Long Island Nerd in the ninth row. And I Am VCOG in the final spot. As the lights go out, and away we go here for the second time here at Rutskogen as we see the field move off. And let's see just how this one is going to go as we move through turn number one. And decent entry here for the entire field as we go through 1 and 2. A little bit of 3-wide action towards the back of the mid-pack. And already Caw Data, the 14 driver, finds himself in a little bit of a predicament here. But more side-by-side racing as we go through turns 3 and 4. Contact here for Biker Pilot. As I'm not sure who that was there that made that contact there with him. But continuing on, we've got stacked up fields. A driver getting way off here. The 023 of Simply Steve. Oh. A big pile up here. Oh, multiple drivers, Urko, Nicolator, both having to get themselves reset here. Nicolator, well, an extensive amount of damage here to the number 5 machine, and to Urko, not quite as much. You can see a little bit there on the rear end, but it is quite extensive there for the number 5 driver. And early on in this race here, lap 2 already, that is going to have huge implications for these drivers. Prince Adam, Beaver, going to have a little bit of a fight here for the lead. Beaver, the number 10 machine, also coming away with the win from the sprint race, already up here in second place, having started in 8th after the inverted start. And a very good move here through 3 and 4. Very great racing here from Beaver as Bob Wallace, Prince Adam, now going to be fighting for second place and trying to keep with Beaver in that for that lead spot as we tune to Caw Data, getting right on the tail of I Am VCOG. Oh, getting back onto the racing surface here. Not at oh man, those tires have got to be cooked now at this point. Caw Data is fighting that car horribly at this point. It is not looking to be his friend right now. Prince Adam, the 43 machine, finding himself in a bit of trouble here, as well as Eat My Dust in the number 24 machine continues to have more trouble, and into the wall he goes for Eat My Dust, who, man, really has not seemed to have a great day here at Rutskogen, and seemingly more drivers not having, oh boy, slow car on the surface here. I Am VCOG going to be the 999 driver who's out ahead of this pack here. And these drivers trying to navigate their way around the 999 machine. And Urko, Nicolator continuing their fight here. Both of these drivers with extensive amounts of damage to their vehicles. I would say Urko probably having the least amount between the two. Oh boy. And here Urko going to have the 999 machine getting right in his lane of traffic here. Lane of travel, I should say, in his fight for 13th, and having a huge gap be put between himself and the number 5 machine. Not an ideal situation here for Urko at all. And I Am VCOG doing everything that he can to stay fast and stay out on the track here. And it's just one of those things as a driver that you have to be aware of. And sometimes you'll run into those situations where there's going to be drivers that are that are faster than you trying to move their way around, and you're also trying to hold your line and do your race as well. So at the end of the day, that's racing for you. Sam Renner, welcome to the chat, and asking, I assume this is the race with the low downforce setup, and no, actually, we already experienced that. We had the qualifying with low downforce, and both of our sprint and feature race will have the high downforce setup. So things are quite interesting here today, to say the least. Back up here in 4th place, though, G-Bay fending off the number 6 of Squilliam, as Squilliam tries to put the pressure on the number 28 driver and close the gap here just as much as he possibly can here. Going to be within a quarter of a second here of the number 28 driver. Going to be almost on the tail here. Going to try to move on to the inside here of this tricky turn of 3 and 4. Again, having to manage all of your weight and also not getting too aggressive on the throttle. This is another section of the track where perfecting your line is going to be absolutely critical. Fast in, fast out. And Squilliam right now showing very good work here, very good line work around Rudskogen, and continues to close in on DC for that 3rd place spot at the moment. And I do believe at some point during this race we will see drivers come down into pit road at one point or another. I want to say it's around the halfway mark in today's race. So drivers will have to go through pit road and grab tires and fuel before they finish out today's race. And again, that's if I remember correctly. For myself up here in the booth, it's a little strange having more than one road series that I commentate for a week. Sam Renner, are you going to say my full team name next week? Hold on, Sam. Let me look up your full name here, your full team name here real quick, because if it's the one that I'm thinking of. Oh, no. Sam, you know, as much as I would like to, I'm gonna. I think you're still gonna have to be PAFD. I think you're still gonna have to be PAFD. Oh dear God. I love it. I love it. I love it. All right. Long Island Nerd and AJ gonna have a bit of a fight here for what is gonna be 9th place here at the moment. And let's actually take a moment. I want to ride out the rear view, or on the tail of the O2 machine, and taking a look at AJ at the moment. The 45 machine trying to challenge Long Island Nerd for that 9th place spot as we go through 3 and 4. And you can see, as we just saw a moment ago, you can take 3 and 4 rather wide, and that can cost you quite a bit of time when you do so. It is a tricky spot as you're trying to slow that momentum down as you're going downhill and also turning in. It's a strange feeling. It's not something I can really describe. You have to take a lap yourself. I'm sorry, Sam. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to disappoint you and the people, but you know, if iRacing broadcasting rules weren't so, well, interesting, I would maybe say sure. But we also like to keep things relatively PG here on the TGS channel. So maybe one day, maybe one day you'll find me saying it one time. Oh dear, but that is, yes, that is that had me chuckling for quite some time. I will admit that. But lap 8 of 40 here. There is quite a bit of racing to be done here. Long Island Nerd takes it a little bit too wide here. And AJ going to move up into 9th place here. That was the mistake that he was hoping to see from the O2 driver. And Long Island Nerd responds back with a very, very good move onto the inside, moving through turn 10. Great work here from Long Island Nerd and showing that he definitely knows what he's doing around here, as AJ going to try and put up the attack here. The number 45 machine through the final turn, taking it very, very close to the grass there, up on the curb and down the straightaway here. Going to stay right in the draft if he can, as close as he can. Going through turn 1 and number 2 here, the long right-hander onto the straight. Heading to turn number 3, AJ going to stay within a quarter of a second here of the O2 driver as they continue their fight for 9th place. And let's take a moment here to ride on board here with AJ. And you can see that this is a good example, a good view of what it's like there through 3 and 4. And I don't, for the keen-eyed among you who were paying close attention there just a few seconds ago, you might have noticed how the car was wanting to shift and wanting to start to slide. That is just one of the challenges that you'll have to face here on this track. It is a very tricky, very, very difficult track. If you're an inexperienced driver, it is very tricky to be fast on, but it is very rewarding once you figure those lines out and really start to master them. But AJ here capitalizing on the advantage that he had after getting ahead of a Long Island Nerd and starting to increase the gap now between himself and the O2 driver as they come across the checkered line and heading into turn number 1. Just a little bit ahead of them is Prince Adam and Simply Steve, who are loosely battling for the 6th place spot at the moment. Not exactly fighting tooth and nail, but close enough that they are, well, gonna at least be thinking about one another. I'm more than certain about it. Simply Steve probably checking out, or Prince Adam I should say, probably checking in his rear view mirror and maybe giving a wave every now and then to Simply Steve here. But Steve is going to have a little bit of company here in the presence of Prince Adam, as the 43 driver tries to fend off and also keep himself ahead of Simply Steve and try and reel in G-Bay, who's improved his gap to about a little over 3 seconds. And I just realized that music has been playing this entire time, and I do apologize for that. That was not my intention there. So sorry if you could hear music this entire time. Not that it probably really mattered for most. Anyway, Simply Steve, Prince Adam continue their bout here for 6th place. And right now, as it looks like, most of the field has settled out in their battles here. Not a whole lot happening out on the field. Squilliam, the number 6 driver, and right as I'm starting to say that, closing in on Bob Wallace here for 2nd place. Closing that gap here to just under a half a second now between these two drivers. So there is still a little bit of action to be seen here for these two drivers. And Beaver, I mean, after talking with him after his win of the sprint race, I didn't really think that he was going to come away with another win here going into the feature after starting in 8th place, but he seems to have capitalized on his pace here and is just driving away with this lead after a almost a 9.5 second gap between himself and second place Bob Wallace, as we continue to ride on board here with Squilliam there in their battle for second place. Bob Wallace doing everything that he can to stay ahead of the number 6 driver, trying to stay on that preferred lane, not trying to make any mistakes here, as that is always easier said than done. Squilliam, Bob Wallace, both fight their way through turns 1 and 2. And as we continue our way, I'm still waiting to see if their win that pit stop is going to be for these drivers. I'm still thinking it's going to be around the halfway mark here, as we actually have a driver making their way down into the pits here. That's going to be AJ in the number 45 machine, as they make their way down into their pit stalls here. But I don't think that's exactly an indication that we're going to see drivers start to make their way through pit road now, at least the field for that matter. This might be a drive-through penalty being served for AJ. I'm not sure what the case might be there, but either way, either how, drivers are going to be thinking about fuel and tires at some point or another here. Bob Wallace, though, big trouble here. Let's take a quick look at the replay here for the 666 machine, see what kind of trouble he got himself into here as we were working our way into turn 12. Gets a little bit loose there and easily makes that correction back. Luckily, no one else around him to make things any worse there. But for Bob Wallace, that is going to come at the cost of positions here, down to 4th place from that 2nd place spot where he just was fighting with Squilliam, the number 6 driver. But for Squilliam, this is going to be an opportunity to move his way up the podium and continue that fight there for that podium spot. But Long Island Nerd, the O2 machine, making his way down into the pits now as well. Again, I don't think this is exactly an indication that we're going to start to see multiple drivers making their way into the pits here, but it is a possibility that we'll start to see at least a good handful start to make their way in here before too long, at least in the next 5 laps would be my guess at the very least. So lap 15 of 40 here at Rudskogen, and right now, Biker Pilot AJ fighting it out here for 10th place at the moment. We're having a little bit of a fight, I should say, as Biker Pilot Biker Pilot with Team Rookie Mistake going to be fighting it out here. Ooh, boy, big contact to the wall as he comes out of turn 12. Trying to keep things away from the rest of the field as he gets things corrected here once again. And I don't know, folks, it looks like the front right has a little bit more camber than Biker Pilot might want. The pit crew might want to take a look at that one here. And luckily, Biker Pilot is right there by pit road. I mean, he could literally just take it across the grass and just hope and pray, living on a prayer type of situation here There you go. There you go. Straight into pits. Straight into the pits. There you go. Yeah, you know, tough break. Very, very tough break, but also lucky break that he was right there by pit road to get that car back into the pits and get that thing fixed before trying to take it out any further. Unfortunately, yes, it will come at the loss of positions, but you also don't want to try and keep racing with the same car and run the risk of ruining someone else's race. You know, just trying to, you know, prove a point or whatever the case might be. I know that... oh, boy. Long Island Nerd, the O2 machine, almost coming into contact there with Eat My Dust as they were going through turn 12. Coming out of turn 12, I should say. Eat My Dust. Probably... a little sweaty after that one, but definitely thankful no contact coming in the way of that here as Long Island Nerd gets himself recorrected and back on the track here. But now as things have settled out here to a point where there is not much happening out on the track at the moment is in the way of battles. And in fact, it is quite the opposite. There is quite a bit of distance between a lot of this field at the moment. And you can see that on the left-hand side of your screen as well with the interval time. So, again, there's just a lot of distance between drivers in some regard as far as time is concerned. And at the moment, it's going to be a matter of just staying consistent, keeping that pace as consistent as you possibly can here. So, going to be seeing what drivers are going to do here for themselves as well as for their teams. Beaver, again, with Team Loveseats, going to secure quite a bit of teams as himself and his teammate, Captain CK, currently in 7th place, are going to score good points for themselves and their team. Squilliam going to be with Team Backmarker Motorsport, and his teammate, Prince Adam, also having similar success here today, kind of ironically as well. Squilliam taking 2nd place and Prince Adam in 6th. So quite a bit of points being gathered for both teams here today, and DC in that 3rd place spot. Let's see if I can find what team he's on here. I'm not even sure if he... DC5, okay, Bong Life Motorsport. Gonna be his teammate is Urko, who's not quite having as great of success as he would probably hope here today. The number 33 driver back in 13th at the moment, but DC up here in 3rd, going to score good points for himself and Team Bong Life Motorsport. So overall, a very competitive day, I think, for drivers all over the track here, even despite the lack of action at the moment around the track. Again, in the form of drivers racing one another side by side, it is all coming down to point strategy, pit strategy, so on and so forth. It's going to be consistency for these drivers. Who's going to have the long run pace that we're going to expect to see from this field as this race goes on, given that we're now going to be at the halfway mark. We've had a good chance to see I guess you could say this is a long run for these drivers, but we've still got another 20 laps left to go. So how are they going to do under these next 20 minutes? There is still actually less than that probably, because again, this is a time-based event here. So we could potentially hit 40 minutes before we hit 40 laps. That actually seems logical. That might actually be the case. We probably will hit the time limit before we hit our lap limit here. So either way, either how, they're still going to have to, drivers are still strapped in for the long haul here, as there is going to be just about 15 minutes left to go here before things are all said and done. So while we're taking a look at things and while things are rather settled out here on the track, let's go ahead and take a look at point standings at the moment. As DC third place driver going to make his way down into pit road. So I think this might potentially be the indicator of the start of pit stops here. I believe it is, as DC is going to make his pit exit here. But back to point standings here. Beaver is going to be the driver currently in first with Team Loveseat with 41 points to his name at this time. Daniel Smith, a.k.a. Lieutenant Dan, is going to be the next driver in second place. Only 1 point behind Beaver, but because of Beaver's performance here today, I'm sure he is going to have quite a bit of a cushion after tonight's win. So Martin Wallace taking third, and Martin Wallace is Black Bob with 0. Oh, geez. Okay, with Team ZFG, you guys. Black Bob with Team ZFG. Jeez. Taking third place in the Drivers' Championship at the moment. And Backmarker Motorsport currently taking the lead in the Drivers' Championship here at the moment. So, Backmarker Motorsport consisting of Squilliam and Prince Adam. And then second place in the Team Motorsport in the Team Championship is N Squared, who is McMurk and Nicolator for that team. Third place is Scuderia DN. I can never say that. With Paperbag and Barsal 22 as those two drivers in that team. And taking a look at things right now as things progress here, looks like DC is the only driver to take a stop down pit lane yet. As I say that, Prince Adam makes his way down into pit road here, the number 43 driver, as well as Captain CK now also making the stop down into pit lane here. Right as I mentioned it, that's when drivers start to make their way through. But I'm curious to see if there is going to be any sort of implications on the field that we might see from pit road, or from these pit cycles starting to happen here. I mean, we could potentially see a battle here for 6th place between Prince Adam and Simply Steve here. I don't think it will be, though, as Adam is going to get across the pit limit line there and back out onto track here as he comes into a little bit of traffic in the form of Car Data, the number 14 driver, as well as our leader, Beaver, the number 10 machine, making his way through the track and just looking consistent as always. Over a 14 and a half second gap between himself and the rest of the field. And get this, Beaver just set his fastest lap, last lap, with a 114.87 as his best time. That is just absolutely phenomenal here for Beaver. Given it is lap 23 and he has not come down pit road for any reason at all here. So Beaver still showing his dominance here in the second half of tonight's race as we approach what is going to be almost, we'll call it 11 minutes left to go before we see the checkered flag fly here. So while we have a few minutes here, and, well, won't take a few minutes, but while we have a minute here, we're going to take a short moment up here in the booth, and we're going to take a ride on board with, let's choose Nicolator here, the number 5 driver, and let's just take another lap or two on board here and just enjoy the sights and sounds here at Rudskogen. Join a couple laps on board here, or rather a lap and a quarter here with Nicolator and the number 5 machine, just taking a lap on board and seeing what it's like here for Nicolator here, kind of in the midfield, sitting in 11th place at the moment. So getting a different perspective as we now see our leader, Beaver, make his way, leave it to Beaver to come down into pit road here on lap 25. And yes, absolutely pun intended on that one, if that wasn't obvious already. But anyway, anyhow, with a phenomenal gap that he's developed between himself and the rest of the field, but also having Squilliam who is now going to take the lead here. It also needs to come down into the pits here. You know, I got to wonder if Squilliam has any sort of plan for this, if there's really anything that he's going to be able to do. I mean, best case scenario, let's take a look. Pit lap times are about 46 seconds at the moment. Now, my guess would be that if in a perfect world, Squilliam would have to pit pretty much as Beaver was leaving pit road and getting onto track in order to keep the lead, if that was the case. But that's definitely not going to be the case here, as Beaver is just about a half of the way around the track at the moment. Surprisingly, already not too far behind Squilliam here, as he makes his way through the sharp right-hander. And yeah, I think this is going to be a very, very definitive race here for Beaver, and a very successful race at that for the number 10 driver, who again also came away with the feature win for the race at Donington Park. So Beaver's definitely showing his dominance in this series and behind the wheel of that number 10 machine. So it's going to be interesting if we have any drivers that show some competition towards that number 10 machine and their team. But right now, they are the ones to dominate this series at the moment. But I'm also taking a look here at Squilliam, who is looking rather interesting at the moment. With 6 minutes left to go in this race, he's yet to come down to pit road, and those tires they can't be... Okay. Had me nervous there for a second, but Squilliam, coming down into pit road here. Unfortunately, he's going to lose the lead that he had here in order to get fresh tires and fuel and so on and so forth. But there is a possibility here that he just... No, definitely not going to come out that way as I was hoping that it would, but Squilliam doing a phenomenal job either way, keeping himself up here in the top 3. DC as well. All 3 drivers have done a fantastic job in their bouts to stay in that top 3 and get themselves onto a podium here for today's race. And for Beaver, 2 times in a row for the sprint and the feature. Assuming the next 5 minutes all go well, so with only a few minutes left to go in this race here at the moment, Captain CK, AJ, going to start to close in here on one another with about a little over a half a second separating these 2 drivers as they go through 3 and 4. AJ going a little wide there. Losing a little bit of time here to the number 50 driver trying to close it back in. And he does so just by a margin. So things are winding down to the last few minutes that we have here. Beaver, Squilliam, DC, all our top 3 at the moment. Gonna look to secure these last few laps here. Only a couple laps left to go before the checkered flag flies. And we determine who our top 3 are for today's feature race. And we'll see if Beaver is going to be a back-to-back winner here tonight. Which I think at this moment, most of us can safely say that it is going to be a Beaver back-to-back win here, with Squilliam on the podium here 2 times in a row, as well as DC coming in here for the feature, securing some points for himself and his team. Oh boy, G-Bay having big contact here out of the final turn, and also in the final minute of the race here, before we see the checkered flag fly, G-Bay, massive contact to the wall, and it is now not driving straight in any way, shape, or form. Fighting that car to the fullest extent, and look at just how that wheel... Oops. We'll probably see it more once he gets onto the straightaway here, but yeah, that wheel is definitely not lined up straight. Gonna have some extensive damage to the front end of that number 28 machine, and now gonna have to limp it back to the checkered line as Beaver is going to see the checkered flag fly here as we cross 40 minutes, and I think it will fly once we get a little bit closer to the end of the track here. But time has concluded for drivers here. It is just a matter of waiting for that checker to officially fly and bringing it home for today's race. And Beaver, Squilliam, DC, all of our top three at the moment looking mighty calm as they make their way through the final few sections of the track at the moment. And meanwhile, one battle, really to specify here to be exact, developing here for 4th place, but is still a rather loose battle at that. And here the checkered flag is going to fly as Beaver makes his way out of the final turn and across the checkered line for the 2nd win here today at Rutskagen. Squilliam, DC, quite a bit of distance separating these two drivers. Squilliam going to take it out of the final turn and take it across the line for 2nd place here today. DC also going to take it through the final turn and across the line for himself and teammate Urko for a podium finish here today. Bob Wallace, Simply Steve, they're going to have potentially a little bit of a fight here. Simply Steve trying to close the gap as much as he can here. I don't think it's going to be quite enough with a half a second separating these two. Bob Wallace, a good launch out of the final turn of 13 and across the checkered line for 4th and 5th place for Wallace and Steve, respectively. Prince Adam, Captain CK, also going to have a little bit of a battle for 6th and 7th place, and across the line they take it here today. AJ taking it home in 8th place. Eat My Dust now going to make their way through the final turn, I should say. The number 24 machine taking it home for 9th place here today, and a few other drivers, Book in 976, take it home here as well. And I think that will be all of our drivers here today. We are going to go ahead and get ready for our post-race interviews as we wrap up today's action and reminisce over the events of today's race. And I gotta say, it was a phenomenal race to have here today, as we're just waiting for some drivers to make their way into the booth here. If we can possibly get them, we might have to do things backwards here, but that is a-okay. Let's go ahead and bring in Beaver up into the booth here. Beaver, it's like deja vu. Welcome back to the booth, and congratulations yet again on another win here at Rutskagen. You had things dialed in here. Really didn't seem like there was any sort of doubt that you were going to end up on the podium here, or even with another win here. Any sort of issues right out of the gate, starting off from 8th place? I mean, it really seemed like the start was fairly easy, and as we're looking at the replay here on our screens, you managed to make your way up from 8th all the way to 3rd before the first turn. So it really didn't seem like you had too much of an issue here, Beaver. But I mean, I'll let you do the talking here. What was it like here for your feature race here? It seemed like you were calm and confident, but again, I'll let you do the talking.
Yeah. Gosh, that was not the start I was expecting. I went into it fully anticipating that it was going to be a nice, easy start. I would kind of fall in line, but the car in front of me got a slow start, and then I noticed maybe 3 others off the front to the left, and so I went through the middle, and I think there was a little bit of contact with maybe Squilliam there at the start, but even then, man, I was blown away by the start, and then by the end of the lap up to second. So after that, it was really just running clean laps, clean, consistent laps. At that point, when things aren't as interesting, I challenged myself to go for fastest laps. So lap by lap, I was trying to cut the time down a little bit. It's just a little self-challenge. And 40 minutes is a long time, but yeah, the fun track. I guess it works well for me.
You know, and that was the one thing that I was talking about during the broadcast was just kind of how unique this track is and how it's kind of a perfect, I guess you could kind of say a quote-unquote developmental track for both new drivers and experienced drivers. It's got a little bit of everything. It's got those nice turns, it's got those elevation changes, it's got nice straightaways. It's just got a little bit of everything to make the racing fun, exciting. But Beaver, I mean, having dominated this race here today, it really didn't seem like you had a whole lot of competition for you here tonight. But taking a look and going forward a couple weeks from now, we head to Zolder for race number 3. Now, what are your expectations there? And it'll be the first time that I've done a broadcast or even been to Zolder myself. So kind of fill me in. What do you expect to see there?
I think Zolder can be a lot of the same of what this track is. There's more straightaway there, but it has its characteristic corners. It has a little bit of elevation change, which can make things fun. A few chicanes. I think, that track has a bunch of those curbs that can send you to the moon. So those are something to be careful of, especially in these cars that are so low to the ground and no suspension travel. But that's a fun track. I'm looking forward to that one. It's got tight corners, sweeping, fast corners. A lot of fun, Zolder.
Absolutely. Well, I look forward to seeing your race there, and I'm not sure if you're racing in the endurance series. I want to say that you are, but I'll save that for next week when we get there. But Beaver, before I let you go, before you do your celebrating and cracking open a well-deserved cold one after tonight, I'm sure you're probably feeling it after that. But anyone you want to shout out, anyone watching the broadcast at home in the pit crew, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I guess I don't know who's watching, so hello to everyone. Thanks for watching. It's fun knowing that people are spectating races like this. Thanks, Mason, for doing the broadcast once again, and Goon Squad. I've tuned into several of your streams, and I love every production, so it's awesome to be able to race for you guys and have you here with us.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure, and so far I've enjoyed the action that I've seen, and hopefully everyone at home is enjoying the action as well. But Beaver, on that note, thank you for joining me up here in the booth, and I look forward to seeing you probably again next week, but also again in a couple weeks at Zolder.
Looking forward to it. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
You too.
Alrighty, folks. So that was Beaver taking it home for the second time for the win here today at Rudskogen for round number 2 of the Sprint Series. And let's see if we can get our second place driver, Squilliam, up here in the booth. Squilliam, welcome again to the booth. Congratulations on second place here. I believe again is another second place finish here tonight for yourself, unless I'm mistaken. But Squilliam, kind of more or less the same that we saw from the sprint, just a little bit more, I guess, a little bit of a steadier start for the for this part of the race than what we saw for the sprint. But I mean, for yourself and for DC, who was kind of there with you battling for second for a little while, once you got yourself settled out and once it was kind of past the point of, there's someone on my tail that's trying to overtake me, I mean, what was it? What kind of mindset were you trying to get yourself in once that point had been reached?
Yeah, man. I mean, well, I had an awful start and lost like 6 places off the line, but got really lucky with some people spinning. And yeah, once I kind of started gapping him and trying to get past Bob was really tough. I knew I had some pace over him, but he was just that tiny bit slower, but not by much, and it's that pace that's hard to get through without having to really try to send it. And I got kind of lucky that he spun around, but once I got past him, I mean, yeah, it was just trying to get into cruise control and just keep hitting the same lap times every single time, and just trying to get robotic with it.
Yeah, consistency playing a huge role here in today's race, and especially here at Rudskogen. It's a very technical, a very tricky track to get perfect every single time. But
yeah, definitely.
You held your own. You did a phenomenal job, and I mean, for yourself, and not only yourself, but for DC and Bob Wallace, Simply Steve. I mean, all of you guys had some great battles there for quite a while. I mean, Beaver was all out on his lonesome. He was kind of just having his own little Sunday drive out there in the front of the field, it seemed like. But for the rest of the field, though, it was quite the race to be had. And looking forward, in 2 weeks, we head to Zolder, which is not necessarily the same, but a little bit of the same kind of style, I guess, kind of a smaller road course that we'll see here. What do you expect? A lot of the same, or do you hope to improve after the performance that you had here today?
Yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with Zolder, actually. I know the track really well, so I'm hoping some more podiums in the future, maybe some wins. Beaver was definitely, on another planet in terms of pace tonight. But last week, granted, I had some bobbles and stuff like that. I had a little bit more pace over him, so it'll be interesting to see. Zolder is definitely another track, unfortunately, that's extremely hard to pass on. But I think it'll have some really close racing, and hopefully it'll just kind of keep how it's going, having lots of close racing with a lot of guys and things like that. So
yeah, absolutely. I'm loving to see. I'm loving the fields that I've been seeing. I'm loving the driving, all of the skill that we're seeing from this field. So hopefully it continues to just get better and better as the season goes on. I'm just loving every week that I'm here. So I think only things can go upwards from this point on. And for yourself here as well, Squilliam, before once again, the floor is yours, my friend. Last chance to give your shout outs and thank yous before we close things out here tonight.
Honestly, I want to give a massive shout out to Prince Adam, my teammate. That man has really stepped up, definitely from the preseason and after that first race, and now, I mean, he is really learning the car. He's putting a lot of time into it, and he is awesome to race alongside, and we work off each other super well, and I think we definitely have a good shot at team championships and stuff like that. Only time will tell, but big shout out to him and all the work that he's putting in, man. It's really awesome.
Absolutely. Well, thank you once again for joining me up here in the booth here for a second time tonight, Squilliam, and I look forward to seeing you, I think, next week at the Endurance Series, but also in the coming weeks at Zolder for the third round of the Sprint Series.
Oh yeah, man, I'll be there.
All right, I look forward to seeing you, and good luck to you next week, and also good luck to you heading into Zolder.
Thanks, man.
Absolutely. Have a great one.
You too.
Alrighty, folks, that was Squilliam heading out of the booth here, taking home second place here tonight. And last and certainly not going to be least here, DC taking home third place on the podium here today. DC, welcome to the booth. Congratulations on your podium finish here for the feature race. And I gotta say, it was probably a nerve-wracking race for yourself. I mean, if you weren't Beaver, if you were anywhere in that top three, it was a challenging race, I would say, between both yourself, Squilliam, Bob Wallace, Prince Adam, Simply Steve. I mean, it seemed like there was just a mixture of drivers that were all up there fighting for those second and third place spots throughout the entirety of this race, and you happen to be one of those lucky drivers that managed to close in that third place spot or even a podium in general and hold it down. And here you are today, coming across the line, sitting up here in the podium. I mean, how are you feeling right now?
I'm definitely feeling great. It's been a while since I've kind of gotten to the podiums. It's the first time in the broadcasting room, so pretty awesome. But yeah, it feels pretty great. I got the P2 in race 1 and P3 in race 2, but yeah, I just didn't have the pace to like, honestly, in race 1 I probably should have got P3, but I think Squilliam had a few too many slowdowns, so I was able to grab P2. But I think I had the pace for P3 today, and hopefully just keep working on that.
Yeah, and looking forward, in 2 weeks we head to Zolder, which is more or less a similar style, a similar feel to what we raced at here today at Rudskogen. But I mean, you're talking about improving and talk about making yourself a better driver. I mean, what do you plan to accomplish going into Zolder, and what kind of plans and preparations do you have going into that race?
It's just gonna be my normal practice routine that I've been kind of just working on this season. I think I'll have a little bit of a better time at Zolder. This is my first time at this track, and first race ever at this track. So Zolder I have a little bit more experience with, so I think I'll do a little bit better there. But really, it's gonna come down to the practice that we put in. Some of these guys are just really fast. I can't catch them, but I'm just gonna keep working on it, and hopefully one of these races, maybe I can get a win. But we'll see.
Absolutely. Well, persistence is key, and I think you've definitely got that in your tool belt here tonight, as well as going forward into this season, DC. And from what I saw tonight, you did phenomenal as well for your teammate Urko. They're taking home 12th place for your team here today. But DC, I want to thank you for joining me up here in the booth here tonight, and congratulations on your podium as well as being up here in the booth for the first time. It's great to have you. But before I let you go, before you get to celebrating with your teammates and fellow drivers, is there anyone watching the broadcast, anyone at home or in the pit crew that you want to shout out and thank before you go?
If Chris is watching or Shane are watching, thanks for tuning in, and just a shout out to the J2I guys. I just keep pushing because of them. I want to get better, I want to fight with them, so thank you to all you guys.
Absolutely. Well, thank you once again for joining me up here tonight, DC, and I look forward to seeing you in the coming weeks.
Thank you.
Alrighty, folks, DC taking it home here for third place here tonight, and that is going to conclude our post-race interviews here today, and also going to conclude our coverage of the J2I Sprint Series round number 2 here at Rudskogen. My name is Mason Heimball with Team Goon Squad, bringing you the action here tonight, and I want to thank each and every single one of you who's tuned in, and hopefully get to see you all next week, same time and same place, as we head to round number 2 of the Endurance Series. And thank you all once again for tuning in and watching. Hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you all next week.
Oh, Pearson gets into the 95 of Bolts. Here comes the caution.
Flag is dropped here at Daytona, and away we go for the first time. Nicholas Morcel, Sean.
Looks like most get through unscathed. Look at that, there's Reed Gibson. A big move at the inside line of Dom's, possibly a little bit of contact.
Now, as we've got 3 wide action going through turns 1 and 2.
And they're underway. Eric Hahn takes a nice jump. Wilson hasn't let it go very far.
Go out here for circuit spot Frankenstein. Alex Johnson's off to a brilliant start there.
Just how oddly shaped this one is. We saw in the background Eric Hahn go for a bit of a swing, and he's gone and he's over.
New stuff. Cody Graham's the 1-on-1 up into second place. Alex Johnson 6/10 to lead at the moment.
They're dicey up front. There's Andrew Kessel, Justin Sang.
They are ready to go. The lights are out, and away we go for the very first time here at Okayama International Circuit. Finley Fitzsimmons.